Right friends, let us look at the last capsule of the week. This is on differentiated banks. What is the difference between universal banks as well as differentiated banks? Before going into the difference, recently licenses were given for payments banks as well as small finance banks. These come under the category of differentiated banks, and this is the first time in our country differentiated banks are given licenses, right? So, what is universal bank? I have given examples of universal banks: Bank of Baroda, Axis Bank, State Bank of India, Vijaya Bank, HDFC Bank. These are all examples of universal banks. So, in the banking system, now the present existing banks, existing commercial banks are classified as universal banks. What exactly is the meaning of universal banks? I have listed out points here. Banks can undertake any type of banking operation. Here, small retail loans. Please look into this slide. Small retail loans means the loans which you and I take from the banking system, like home loan, mortgaging land or building, we take loan, that is mortgage loan, then vehicle loan, then credit card advances. So, these are all examples of retail loans. This also include personal loan. So, these are small retail loans. At the same time, corporate sector loans. Please look into this slide. These are all corporates, Mahindra and Mahindra, Larsen and Toubro, Vedanta. These are all corporates. So, corporate sector loans running into crores of rupees. This comes under wholesale banking, and the first one is retail banking. Then investments in capital market. Please look into this slide. Banks invest in capital market also. Then participated in call money transactions or money market instruments. Please look into this slide. These are examples of money market instruments. Banks participate in some of the money market instruments. Please don't forget, money market instruments are regulated by Reserve Bank of India, whereas capital market instruments are regulated by SEBI. And participation in foreign exchange transactions. Banks participate in foreign exchange transactions. Please look into this slide. Then selling insurance products of third parties. Banks can sell insurance products of third parties. Insurance firms, there are life insurance firms, non-life insurance firms, at the same time stand-alone health insurance firms. And banks can sell the insurance policies of a maximum of 3 life insurance firms, 3 non-life insurance firms, 3 stand-alone health insurance firms. And at the same time, banks can give non-fund based support with the performance guarantees as well as letters of credit. Please look into this slide. This is example of performance guarantee. On behalf of a client, bank can give performance guarantee to an organization. This is a non-fund based support. At the same time, on behalf of the buyer, bank can give letter of credit, right? So, these are called non-fund based support. So, whatever I have discussed here, all these activities can be undertaken by banks nowadays. So, that's why they are called universal banks. So, ICICI Bank, HDFC Bank, Vijaya Bank, Andhra Bank, Bank of Baroda, these are all examples of universal banks. So, they can do any type of operation. So, after discussing about universal banks, let us look at differentiated banks. Reserve Bank of India issued guidelines for small finance banks as well as payments banks in 2015. And this is for the first time these types of banks are being contemplated in our country. And the Reserve Bank of India granted in principle approval to 11 payments banks. Subsequently, 3 have withdrawn, and 10 small finance banks in September 15, and within 18 months they have to commence their operations. And here 2 important points, please don't forget. For these differentiated banks, minimum capital requirement is 15%, whereas for universal banks, the minimum capital requirement is 9%. At the same time, minimum paid up equity capital requirement is rupees 100 crores for these differentiated banks, and it is rupees 500 crore for universal banks. And let us look at payment banks. this payments banks, please don't forget, Airtel became the first payments bank in the country as it started its operations in Rajasthan. And if you go back to little history, Reserve Bank invited applications, 41 firms applied, Reserve Bank of India gave licenses for 11 firms, and this was based on the External Advisory Committee headed by Nachiket More, and they are required to start operations within 18 months. And here basically these payments banks are meant for high volume, low value transactions. High volume, low value transactions. And before going into what can they do, what they cannot do, let us look into this slide. 11 firms which include India Post also. India Post is going to start payments bank by March 2017, and Airtel already started operations in Rajasthan. Airtel became the first payments bank to start operations, and 3 firms have withdrawn. Cholamandalam, Tech Mahindra and Dilip Shangvi's son, they withdrawn after granting licenses. So 8 payments banks will be started, and what they can do, what they cannot do, this is very important. We have already discussed universal banks can do whatever they want, but in these differentiated banks there are restrictions. If you look at the payments banks, they can accept maximum deposits up to rupees 1 lakh per individual. They can open current accounts as well as savings accounts. Current accounts are meant for business transactions. They can issue debit cards but cannot issue credit cards. Then they can give internet banking facility, and they can become business correspondents for other banks with RBI approval. And what they cannot do, I have already told you, they cannot issue credit cards. They are not allowed to lend. They cannot accept NRI deposits. These 3 are very important. They cannot lend the money. Then they cannot issue credit cards. They cannot accept NRI deposits. And what activities they can do, I have given here. Important aspect is they can accept deposits up to rupees 1 lakh per individual. And another important aspect is universal banks can take 30% share in payments banks. This is very important point, right? Having learned about payments banks, let us look at small finance banks. If you go back to history, out of the 72 applications, 10 were granted licenses based on the External Advisory Committee headed by Usha Thorat, and Capital Small Finance Bank became the first in the country to start operations. This is a Jalandhar based bank, right? Then Equitas, based in Chennai, also started their operations. Overall 10 firms are going to start operations as far as small finance banks are concerned. And out of 10 entities, 8 are microfinance institutions. This is very important. Out of 10 small finance banks for which licenses were granted, 8 are microfinance institutions. And this is the message that Reserve Bank of India wants to have the banking operations to the hinterland of the country. And 2 important features of this small finance banks. One is 75% of the loans should go to priority sector lending. For universal banks, the minimum requirement is 40%, whereas for this small finance banks, the requirement is 75%. This is one important point. Second most important aspect is 50% of loan portfolio should be up to 25 lakh size. So overall, 75% of the loans should go to priority sector lending, and at the same time, 50% of loan portfolio should be up to rupees 25 lakh size. Right friends, we discussed in detail about universal banks as well as differentiated banks. Differentiated banks are payments banks as well as small finance banks. Right friends, with this let us conclude the 6th and the final capsule. Please do join for news at a glance as well as questions and answers. Have a nice day. Thank you.